Well, y'all doing? We're gonna take a look at a knife real quick, but the first thing I want to know is how sharp this thing is out of the box. So that's why I got my little best tester going on here. And we'll just go ahead and plunk it somewhere around here. Really? I think that's mostly because I'm not on a super solid piece of stuff, but yeah, let's go ahead. 195. It's actually not too bad. Not great, but not too bad, especially for the price of this thing. So, with that being said, and kind of put out of the way, this is a Xanfa knife, and yeah, that does sound like one of the strange alphabet soup kind of brands that you see on Amazon from time to time that do a whole bunch of other weird stuff. This is basically the only knife from them that I have seen, and I do believe it's called the Santiago. It actually came with a couple of stickers. And your guess is as good as mine on that. They have a social media page, and they've had one post that's actually included this knife, and the other three were about some other knives that weren't theirs. But yeah, I was curious. This thing is $15. And for that, I don't think you're getting a bad deal. So yeah, we got blue micarta kind of going on here. Now, when I did pull it out of the box, there was some, some threads around the outside there. But I took a piece of sandpaper, pretty fine sandpaper, and just kind of gave it a once around the corners to remove all of that. It wasn't really a big deal. It didn't look terrible either, but it's something that I figured I could do a little bit better. Now, according to the Amazon thing, this is 440C. Obviously, it doesn't have that stamped anywhere on the blade, so that's just kind of something that you'd be like, well, I guess I gotta kind of take their word for it. But regardless, it does show that they are fairly competent in sharpening a knife. It's not going to be like your hey, since I have one sitting here, your gas station knife that has literally no edge on it whatsoever, because they don't actually anticipate anybody actually cutting anything with it. So, yeah, they do a pretty darn good job on this micarta here. Now, overall, it looks quite similar to a sodbuster knife, which kind of caught my attention on it. It does kind of come down a little bit more to a spear point right here in the middle instead of having that drop point just a little bit higher up like a standard sodbuster would. But otherwise, yeah. Something interesting with this guy, and it's something that I've complained about on another one. Probably a Samurai knife or something like that. But yeah, this guy's got a liner lock, and yeah, it sticks up proud and does have those little serrations things there. However, this thing in particular, it's far enough back that when you actually do grip it up here, all of those serration sort of things really don't dig into either of your fingers because it's kind of between them here. So it ends up being actually pretty darn comfortable, which I think is kind of neat. I still don't necessarily like proud bumpy liners, but this one certainly does get around that. Yeah, so it is a liner lock. We've got that established. However, there's no deployment methods whatsoever to do with this. You have a single matchstick pull. It is not mirrored on the back, but it is easy enough to pinch the blade right around there anyway. So that's pretty much how I've been doing it. And yeah, it does lock up quite solid. and quite reliably, and not one of those where, you know, if you didn't really flick it out with a lot of authority, that the liner lock just barely kind of gets in there. Nope, it is in there and doesn't flex. I've done some spine whacking and whatnot on it. Seems to work out all right. Something I do find kind of interesting. One, I mean, yeah, they are looking a little bit more traditional, but yeah, it doesn't have a pocket clip on there. So this is going to be kind of in a bottom of a pocket sort of thing. You know, it is what it is. This is a little bit more of a hearkening back to a modern traditional kind of knife, I suppose. But I will say that the micarta on this, it's quite nice. However, I think it's a bit thicker than it really needs to be. Let's see. I will measure the thickness of this little buddy here. Yeah. 0.58, thereabouts of an inch. Quite thick. I don't think it really needs to be quite that thick. It does have a little bit of contouring kind of going on there. It's not quite just a flat slab. And they work out pretty darn well. Now, I have taken this thing apart, and I will say it's not exactly the easiest thing on the planet to do. That's because we got, well, for one, I'll mention this, it's T6 all around, including the pivot. That's why this little pivot hole here looks quite a bit smaller than you'd think it probably should, but yeah. Now, this doesn't have a D-shaped pivot whatsoever, and out of the box, the pivot has permanent Loctite kind of thrown in there. So this was quite difficult to get to open. I ended up having to take it to a hairdryer for a while, and then get some sort of adhesive. I used, in this case, some incredibly sticky Gorilla double back tape sort of stuff, and put that on there for a bit for it to actually adhere perfectly on there, and then miraculously I could get that out. Hooray! So I guess while we're this far in, I can kind of go ahead and take this thing apart. First thing I really do want to say is I don't really have that much of a problem with the hardware on here. Like these screws, they're rather magnetic and ferrous. They don't really feel super soft. And I haven't been able to, or haven't in my normal taking apart and doing other stuff with it, had any problems with stripping them out. So that's pretty darn good. The liners on these guys, both sides, don't have any skeletonization going on. However, you know, we have a fairly large cut for the liner there. That's perfectly fine, especially for $15. And we do have phosphor bronze here on the front. And it's a fairly thick one coming up here. On the bottom side, we also have phosphor bronze. That's a tiny bit thinner than this one, because we also have the little Teflon washer there. But yeah, we got a couple of these little spacers here that you can also unscrew from the other side in case you want to take off both sides of that. But yeah, the other side of here, outside of the oil that I have going on there, see, quite nice and fine from that side. So overall, yeah. And I mean, because of the thickness on this, these things are super, super sturdy. I'm not really able to bend them much, which you certainly can do with some thinner scales. So yeah, now that I've taken all of that apart, I should probably put it back together. You got the blade pin stop sort of thing going on there. And yeah, you just standard steel ball there. Looks like I got some schmutz on my finger. Oh well. There we go. Well, there we did go, and then, okay. Alright, so yeah, other than it using a permanent thread locker to begin with, once I did get it out, or get the thing open, I was able to clean that out a little bit, and, replace it with some more temperate thread locker. So, yeah. And that's why I'm able to actually take this thing apart. However, like I said, unless you really want to take the time and use a hairdryer and everything like that with it, it's probably not going to work out super great for you if you want to disassemble this thing. But I really do have to give it to it. For a $15 knife, this thing is surprisingly robust. Especially with the thickness of the micarta, like I was saying there, with being able to kind of avoid the serrated feelings there. They do actually give you a little bit of a sharpening choil here too, so you have a few sharpening sessions in there before you'd really have any kind of difficulty going on there. The grind kind of coming up here towards the tip is just a little bit off, but that kind of shows you that, well, it was done by hand, and that hand was making knives that they knew were going to sell for no more than $15. So that's perfectly easy to fix if that's something that you are worried about. But yeah, about the only downside I can really say is there's not really an easier way to deploy the blade other than using 2 fingers as a pinch. It would be kind of neat if this little area here would extend down, so it would be out there just a little tiny bit. That way you could, I wouldn't assume that you would be able to flick the thing out all the way, but, to be able to use that to break the detent on the inside, in which case you could probably then flip the blade out a little bit easier or something like that. I don't know. It would have been kind of nice. But, yeah, it's really, really strange name for a company. I guess their logo kind of looks like a butterfly or something like that. Yeah. Either way, for, a vast sum of money being $15, I think this thing is pretty darn good. I'm actually really surprised at the quality of the micarta for how cheap this thing is. And I do hope that the steel on it is at least 440C. Like they say. It doesn't really have it printed on the blade. That usually worries me a little bit, but yeah. Yet again, super, super cheap. So yeah, I guess a couple of other things here. It doesn't come anywhere near either of the support pillars. Now this one's probably not gonna. Yeah, there we go. So you don't really have to worry about any blade wrap sort of going on there. And it's also buried deep enough in there that you're not going to get it anywhere that, yeah. The blade's not going to get you anywhere while it's closed. So that's pretty darn good design, and something that, you know, some companies should work a little bit harder on. I think so, at least. But, yeah. Now, I haven't sharpened this thing yet. I do plan to, a little bit after that. This says 440C, so I do plan on doing a 20-degree per side edge, because that's generally what I do with those kind of steels there. That 440C, 12C27, AUS 8, any of that sort of stuff. That would be probably my go-to angle for those, just because, you know, they're a hard-working sort of thing, and they leave a bit of meat behind the edge there, so you don't really have to worry about it bending or anything like that. This thing isn't the absolute thinnest thing behind the edge, but if you are working with one of those steels like 440C, you do actually want just a little bit more behind it. But yeah, how about if we go ahead and do a little bit more measuring? I guess we'll go for the blade length here. Just a smidge over 3 inches. They would probably call that 3 inches, but yeah, depending on who's actually looking at it and measuring it, and if you're in litigation or not with this particular knife being a part of that, then yeah, it's going to fall into that over 3 inch category. But let's see, blade stock thickness on this guy. Yeah, it's basically 2.75 is what it ended up coming out to. You know, it's going to look a little bit thinner when I put the pressure on and I release that. And yeah, 2.71, 2.73, somewhere right around there. So yeah, it looks a little bit thick from the very top there, but yep, it's full flat grind. And it does a pretty darn good job at doing some cuts and whatnot. Overall, yeah, I actually like it quite a bit, but it is probably not going to be in a lot of people's wish lists or anything like that. This is a really cheap knife, and kind of a modern traditional style sort of thing, with you know, a couple of flaws that some people probably don't like, and yep, some people also don't really like 440C. It's not my absolute favorite steel, but you know, it is nice to see something other than D2 or, you know, like 3CR or something like that on the on these very, very, very cheap guys. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about with this one. Just a supremely cheap knife that I found on Amazon, and it's actually built quite well. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say about this little Xanfa, or Xanfa, I'm not sure exactly. And I think it's the model number, or the model name being the Santiago. I don't know. Like I said, your guess is as good as mine. But, alright, as always, I appreciate y'all for watching. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. And slubba-dubba-scrib-scribe.